Hoje acordei transformada. A brisa do vento chamou por mim e levou-me uma aventura que me perfumou com o cheiro de outono e que me aqueceu o coração. Lá fora, um mundo repleto de coisas boas. E de um brilho que ilumina as minhas ruas. Hoje acordei repleta de luz. Hoje acordei a brilhar.
Sprawling along the right bank of the Tagus estuary, Lisbon stands looking proudly towards the Atlantic Ocean, and was the muse that inspired the great maritime discoveries. Likely founded by Phoenicians, the city was built during a millennium of colorful history, waiting to be discovered by visitors. Lisbon witnessed Muslim domination, a Christian conquest, a golden age of discoveries, destruction by an earthquake, and followed by an enlightened reconstruction process and ongoing renewal. Since 1147, Lisbon has been the political, economic and cultural center of Portugal. And in order to reinforce that strategic position, the city was officially declared capital of the country by King Alphonse III in 1255, which makes Lisbon the second oldest capital city of whole Europe after Athens in Greece. Lisbon has approximately 553,000 inhabitants, who live throughout 24 civil parishes, the freguesias as they are called. One of the most emblematic of them is certainly Belem, a neighborhood which is famous as the place from which many of the great Portuguese explorers set off on their voyages of discovery. In particular, it is the place from which Vasco da Gama departed for India in 1497, and Pedro Álvares Cabral departed for Brazil in 1499. Perhaps Belem's most notorious building is the astonishing Mosteiro dos Jerônimos, the Hieronymites Monastery, a former monastery of the order of Saint Jerome. This monastery replaced the formerly existing church at the same place, which was dedicated to Santa Maria de Belém, and where the monks of the military religious order of Christ provided assistance to thousands of sailors and soldiers in transit to the Portuguese Empire throughout the world. The harbour of Praia do Restelo was a propitious spot for seamen, with a safe anchorage and protection from the winds, sought after by ships entering the tricky mouth of the river Tagus. The nowadays existing structure was built by order of King Manuel I, issued by himself at the courts of 1495, as a final resting place for members of the House of Aviz, which, in his belief, would rule after his death an Iberian dynastic kingdom. In 1496, King Manuel petitioned the Holy See for permission to construct a monastery at the site. The construction itself began, finally, in 1502, and it lasted for 48 years, coming to an end, finally, in 1550. What started as a royal pantheon for King Manuel I and the members of his family and dynasty became also, shortly after the start of its construction, a monument to honor the great Admiral Vasco da Gama, who had discovered the so-wanted maritime road between Portugal, Europe, and India, and the Orient in 1498. An achievement that opened for Portugal the doors of wealth, glory, and the beginning of a mighty global empire. The Hieronymites Monastery is a fantastic reflex of that glorious period of the Portuguese past and an outstanding example of fine arts, good taste, and cultural development. Several artists from Portugal and from all over Europe were involved in the construction of this amazing masterpiece of the so-called Manuelino, a pure Portuguese decorative style created and developed in order to pay tribute to the father of those glorious times, the man who would fill the country with all sorts of imaginable and sometimes unthinkable riches, the king himself, Manuel I. A style that combined all the elements of the astonishing adventure in which the Portuguese saw themselves involved, the discoveries, Taking a closer look into it, we can see ropes, knots, caravels, exotic plants and flowers, sea monsters, sailors and waves. Bottom line, a way found by King Manuel I to leave his signature for eternity. Today, the entire structure offers us an incredible and vast choice of attractions, such as the National Archaeological Museum, the Maritime Museum, and even a planetarium where thousands of Portuguese pupils learn every year about some of the mysteries of our universe. The amazingly adorned south portal or side entrance to the church was designed and carried out by Juan de Castillo, and it's considered one of the most significant of his time. However, despite the spectacularity of its decorations, it is not the main entrance to the building. This shrine-like portal is large, 32 meters high and 12 meters wide, extending 2 stories. Its ornate features includes an abundance of gables and pinnacles, with many carved figures standing under a baldachin in carved niches, around a statue of Henry the Navigator, standing on a pedestal between the 2 doors. The tympanum, above the double door, displays, in half relief, 2 scenes from the life of Saint Jerome. On the left, the removal of the thorn from the lion's paw, and on the right, the saint's experience in the desert. In the spandrel between these scenes is the coat of arms of King Manuel I, while the archivolt and tympanum are covered in Manuelan symbols and elements. The Madonna, Santa Maria de Belem, is on a pedestal on top of the archivolt, surmounted by the Archangel Michael, while above the portal a cross of the Order of Christ can be seen. The portal is harmoniously flanked on each side by a large window with richly decorated mouldings. Although of smaller dimensions than the southern doorway, the main entrance is the most important door to the church because of its ornamentation and its position in front of the main altar. This western portal is a perfect example of the transition from the Gothic style to the Renaissance. It was built by the French sculptor Nicolas de Chantereine in 1517. In the tympanum, there are scenes from the birth of Christ and 2 angels holding the arms of Portugal. The displays on each side of the portal are filled with statues, among them the statue of King Manuel I and his wife Queen Maria of Aragon, both kneeling in a niche under a lavishly decorated baldachin, flanked by their patrons, Saint Jerome and Saint John the Baptist. Renaissance elements include angels in Roman garb, cherubs, the detail and realism of the kings, and the nude study of Saint Jerome. Entering the church, we immediately get in contact with the amazing and bold personality of Diogo Boitac, the French architect, sculptor and engineer who laid the foundations for this 3-aisle church with 5 bays under a single vault, a clearly marked but only slightly projecting transept and raised choir. The entire church layout is composed of aisles and nave that are of equal height. Boitac built the walls of the church as far as the cornices, and then started with the construction of the adjoining monastery. Juan de Castillo, Boitac's Spanish colleague, continued the construction in 1517. He completed the retaining walls and the unique single-span ribbed vault, a combination of stellar vaulting and tracery vaults spanning the 19-meter-wide church. Each set of ribs in the vaulting is secured by bosses. The bold design of the transversal vault of the transept lacks any piers of columns. The transept's unsupported vaults gives the visitor the impression that it floats in the air. Castillo also decorated the 625 meters high, slender, articulated, octagonal columns with refined grotesque of floral elements typical of the Renaissance style. The construction of this lathe Gothic hall is aesthetically and architecturally a true and unique masterwork. It enlarges dramatically the spatial effect of this vast building. The chancel was ordered by Queen Catherine of Austria as the final resting place for the royal family. It is the work of another highly renowned French sculptor, Jean de Rouen, in the classical style. The royal tombs rest on marble elephants and are set between pillars. The tombs on the left side of the choir belong to King Manuel I and his wife Maria of Aragon, while the tombs on the right side belong to King John III and his wife Queen Caterina of Austria. The monastery has been used as a final resting place for several Portuguese historical figures as well. Citizens who gave to king and country their personal contribution in order to make Portugal and its culture relevant and respected throughout the world. Names such as Vasco da Gama, the admiral who discovered the maritime connection between Europe and India, Luís Vaz de Camões, considered the father of the Portuguese language, and therefore its most important poet and writer, Alexandre Herculano, also a famous and renowned writer and considered to be the first history teacher in Portuguese universities, Fernando Pessoa, one of the most intricate poets of all times, considered by many specialists as a genius, King Manuel I himself, his wife, Queen Mary, their eldest son, John III, and his wife, Catherine of Austria, King Sebastian and King Henry, and also former Republican presidents Teófilo Braga and Oscar Carmona. Leaving the church, we enter the so-called jewel of this amazing construction, the astonishing and breathtaking square cloister. With 55 per 55 meters, it is definitely the unmissable spot of the entire monastery. Its construction began by Boitac. He built the groin vaults with wide arches and windows, with tracery resting on delicate mullions. Juan de Castillo finished the construction by giving the lower story a classical overlay and building a more recessed upper story. The construction of such a cloister was a novelty at the time. Castillo changed the original round columns of Boitac into rectangular ones and embellished it with plateresque style ornamentations. Each wing consists of 6 bays with tracery vaults. The 4 inner bays rest on massive buttresses, forming broad arcades. The corner bays are linked by a diagonal arch construction and shows the richly decorated corner pillars. The cloister had a religious function as well as a representative function, by its decorative ornamentations and the dynastic symbolic motifs, such as the armillarium, coat of arms, and the cross from the Order of Christ, showing the growing world power of Portugal. The inside walls of the cloister have a wealth of Manueline motifs, with nautical elements, in addition to European, Moorish, and Eastern motifs. The round arches and the horizontal structure are clearly in the line with the Renaissance architectural style. The decorations on the outer walls of the inner courtyard were made in plateresco style by Castillo. The arcades include traceried arches that gives the construction a filigree aspect. The former refectory across the chapter house, covered with beautiful azulejos, the glazed tiles from the 1700s, was the place where along centuries, literally thousands of white-dressed monks used to take their meals, following the strictest code of absolute silence. An outstanding room which can still be used nowadays as a perfect venue to hold a very special event. Probably this was also the room that witnessed the birth of one of the most famous sweets of Portugal, the delicious and unmissable pastéis de Belém, a recipe created by the monks of this monastery, which is nowadays considered a national treasure. Crossing to the opposite side of the Empire Square, we can find another impressive landmark of this Lisbon's quarter, the Monument to the Discoveries, created by the architect Continelli Telmo and the sculptor Leopoldo de Almeida in 1960, to remind the world about the 500th anniversary of the death of Prince Henry the Navigator, the Portuguese prince who made the discoveries a reality. From the top of this incredible monument, we can taste a breathtaking view, not only over Belém itself, but over the entire surroundings, giving us a unique chance to see a perfect combination of man-made jewels and the ones made by God. From here, the visitor is able to enjoy the view over the rest of Lisbon, also over the famous steel hanging bridge, over the statue of Christ in Majesty, over the peaceful Tagus River, and even over the mighty Atlantic Ocean, which is right around the corner. The compass rose lying at the monument's feet was a gift from the Republic of South Africa in 1960. It measures some astonishing 50 meters in diameter and was created from black and red limestone. It contains a 14 meters planisphere where inlaid ships and caravels mark the main routes established during the age of the Portuguese expansion. The monument has a total height of some impressive 56 meters. It's 20 meters wide and 46 meters long, and the foundations are 20 meters deep. The central figure represents Prince Henry the Navigator and is 9 meters high. The remaining figures, who represent all men and women who gave their knowledges, efforts, and many of them even their lives to king and country in order to make the collective dream to become true, are 7 meters high. Among those figures are represented national heroes like Vasco da Gama, Saint Francis Xavier, Bartolomeu Dias, Pedro Álvares Cabral, Queen Philippa of Lancaster, mother of Prince Henry the Navigator himself, and many others. The discovery of the neighborhood of Belem could not be completed without taking a glimpse on another iconic monument of Lisbon, the amazing Torre de Belem, the Belem Tower. The 4-story limestone tower was built between 1514 and 1519 by order of King Manuel I and had pure military purposes. Built to defend the gateway to Lisbon for all those coming from the Atlantic, it served as a reliable stronghold and defense fortification for a long period of time, until it became finally obsolete and had to be transformed, first into military prison, afterwards into a Navy ammunition depot, and finally into what it is today, a beautiful monument to be visited by millions of people from all around the world.
And so, ladies and gents, these are just a few reasons why you have to visit this amazing and vibrant city. Just come and be part of it. Lisbon, a city full of enchanted mysteries, unexpected surprises, and hidden treasures. We really hope to see you all very soon. Until then, stay sound and safe.